Death, the illusion of the end in the cycle of ignorance. The fear of death is one of the most primitive human instincts, arising from the painful separation from loved ones or familiar lives, from the uncertainty of what happens after the last moment. The question, "Where will I go after I close my eyes?" is always accompanied by a deep anxiety about the continuity of consciousness and existence. According to the great Saint Ramana Maharshi, one of the greatest enlightened masters of India, death is not an absolute end, but only a transitional stage in the cycle of ignorance. He asserted that death does not really end the I we cling to, because the I we have identified for so long has never been our true nature. It is only an idea, a collection of accumulated memories and experiences, an illusion of self. When the physical body disintegrates, it is this false notion of I, driven by karma and unfulfilled desires, that seeks a new form to continue its existence in the cycle of rebirth. As Ramana Maharshi wisely stated, "Death happens only to the body. But if you believe yourself to be the body, you will continue to live as part of that illusion." Who really continues after death? One of the greatest and most common human illusions, even across generations, is the belief that I, with all my personality, memories, dreams and experiences, will continue intact after death. We fear losing ourselves, because we mistakenly think that we are the sum total of all those things. But from Ramana Maharshi's profound perspective, the truth is quite different. He made it clear that after death, what really continues is not the individual self, which is just a temporary illusion, but only the karma and ingrained tendencies of the mind. What you think of as yourself is actually a temporary composition of 3 layers. The physical body, which returns to dust. The accumulated mind, the memories, concepts, and opinions you have accumulated over the years. Habits, desires, and karmic tendencies, vasana, what really drives the journey after death. When the body disintegrates, the unliberated consciousness is still strongly attracted by these vasanas, and it is this energy that pulls the mind to a new situation, which we call rebirth. Ramana Maharshi once taught with great wisdom and awareness, "If you do not know who you really are, you will be caught in the wheel of samsara. But when you realize your own immortal self, there is no one to be reborn." That means, the only thing that keeps you going in samsara is not an intact individual ego, but your own ignorance and karma that you have not yet recognized and released. As long as you think of yourself as a separate entity, there is someone to be reborn. But when you see the pure essence beneath all the concepts, then the cycle of rebirth ends, because there is no one to return to. Rebirth, not a reward or punishment, but the inevitable result of ignorance. Many religions and faith traditions often portray death and rebirth as a divine judgment. If you are good, you go to heaven. If you are bad, you go to hell. But Ramana Maharshi went beyond that and pointed out a simple but moving truth to every heart that yearns for understanding. Rebirth is neither a reward nor a punishment. It is the natural, inevitable result of ignorance and karma. If all your life you have been running after endless greed, the desire to possess more, continuous anger, hatred, and dissatisfaction, temporary desires and passions, and if you have never seriously asked yourself, "Who am I really?" then all these strong tendencies will become invisible magnets, pulling you into a compatible context, the next life. Ramana emphasized a profound truth. Where you are reborn is not decided by God, but by the vibrations you attract within yourself. In other words, it is your karma and your current state of consciousness that determines your next context, not someone else. If you harbor anger, greed, or a thirst for power in your heart, you will attract the appropriate circumstances to continue experiencing the unfinished lessons. Rebirth is not an invisible hand that rewards or punishes you. It is simply a direct reflection of what is operating deep within you. And when you realize that, responsibility and freedom also return to you, every thought, every action, every vibration, are drawing your own future life. What really leads to a good rebirth? Many people think that to have a peaceful afterlife, all they need to do is perform a few solemn rituals or pray sincerely at the moment of death. But Ramana Maharshi points out, a good rebirth does not come from external forms, but from the deep transformation of the mind every day. Just like a seed sown in the ground, the quality of the fruit is not determined by external rituals, but by the nature of the seed and the soil it falls on. So what makes a good seed for the afterlife? 1. A clear, light mind, with few attachments. People who know how to let go of greed, anger, and ignorance. People who live simply, not clinging to fame, profit, or wealth. When they die, their mind is as light as a breeze, easily escaping the pull of karma. 2. Practicing the question, who am I? Even if you ask this question sincerely just once in your life, the seed of awakening has been sown. And in future lives, you can find favorable circumstances to continue to explore your true self. 3. Let go of the idea of I. Death becomes easier when you no longer carry the feeling of I am deprived, I have not done enough, I have failed. Just stopping, accepting, I do not really know who I am, that is the door that opens to peace, to escape from samsara. Ramana Maharshi emphasized, the purity of the mind, that is the key to where you will go. This frees people from the vague fear of death, and puts responsibility back where it should be, in every moment of our lives, right here and now. Reincarnation is also a dream, only enlightenment is true awakening. Even if you are reborn in a beautiful realm, in a wealthy family, or in a blissful heavenly realm, it is still a dream if you have not awakened. Because even though the dreamscape is different, the dreamer is still there. And he is still chained by the illusion of a separate self. Ramana Maharshi said, even if you are born in a heavenly realm, if you do not know who you are still dreaming. Rebirth, whether in a prosperous human life or a blissful heavenly life, is still part of the cycle of ignorance. Only enlightenment, when all notions of I have disappeared, is true awakening. Then there is no one to be reborn, and no one to die. This difference is like that of a person who is sleeping and dreaming that he is happy, that happiness still exists only in a dream. Only when you wake up do you reach a peace that is beyond all change. Ramana Maharshi does not teach us to try to find a better next life, but advises us right now, in this very moment, to turn within to realize the immortal self, which never needs to be reborn. Death, ultimately just an illusion when we see ourselves. In the eyes of ordinary people, death is the door that closes all hope, the abyss of loss and fear. But in the eyes of Ramana Maharshi, death is just a thin veil, something that only has power over those who still believe themselves to be a body, a stream of memories, a personal story. Death can only touch the unreal. It cannot touch the knowing, the immortal essence that each of us is. Ramana once said at the moment his body was about to leave, I am not going anywhere. I am here. That was not a consolation for the person left behind, but a direct affirmation from someone who had transcended all notions of self. A person who no longer sees himself as a body has nowhere to go, no longer sees himself as the past, so there is nothing to lose, no longer seeing oneself as the future, so there is no need for a next life. For those who have realized the pure, formless essence, death is just a passing wind, sweeping away what is not real. And the knowing, that which has never been born, how can it die? What is burned, has never been me. What remains is untouched by time. That is the greatest freedom, absolute peace without any conditions. The fear of death and the mystery of who will die, the inquiry that brings us back to reality. Why are people so afraid of death? Because deep down in our unconscious, we cling to a very strong notion. I am this living person, with memories, dreams, relationships, interests. And if this body is gone, I will also be gone. It is this illusion that makes the fear of death a constant terror, even though we rarely dare to look directly at it. Ramana Maharshi did not just reassure, do not be afraid, but he exposed the root of fear. Fear exists only when we believe I am this body and mind. When we see our true self, the fear of death disappears like darkness before dawn. The paradox, death never happens to the real. It only happens to the false, the body, the memory, the idea of I. But because we mistake the false for ourselves, we are afraid of losing it. Ask yourself more deeply. Who is the one who will die? What really disappears when this body stops breathing? If you observe carefully, you will see, what is lost is only the things that change every minute and every second, the aging body, the conflicted mind, the stories and roles in life. But the knowing, the thing that sees all these changes, has never changed, never been born, never died. When the self disintegrates, infinite life emerges. The strange and profound thing that Ramana Maharshi pointed out. Death is really necessary, but not the death of the body, but the death of the illusion of a separate self. When this false self disintegrates, what remains is not nothingness, but pure, infinite, nameless life, always present. You will no longer feel I exist as someone separate. Instead, there is only pure presence, without boundaries. In that state, there is no I to be born. There is no I to die. There is no next life to worry about. There is no this life to cling to. The I that we used to fear losing, turns out to have never been real. The only thing that truly exists, is that which knows everything but belongs to nothing. The unthinkable truth, and Ramana's approach. In his teachings, Ramana Maharshi always avoided getting bogged down in complicated philosophical interpretations. He emphasized a direct and simple path. No need for lofty theories. No need for magic, rituals. No need to wait for the next life. Just turn inward, ask yourself repeatedly and patiently, who am I? This is not a question to be answered by thinking, but a mirror to reflect back to the questioner himself. When you turn into the knowing, layers upon layers of the illusion of I begin to fall away. Finally, there is no one left to ask, no one left to answer, only pure, clear, nameless knowing remains. Physical death, and the death of ignorance. Ramana once emphasized, you cannot avoid physical death, but you can make it meaningless, by letting ignorance die first. When ignorance dies, the body still dies as a natural law. But the fear of death disappears. Samsara ends, because there is no one left to be reborn. And peace is no longer conditional, no longer comes from hope, and is not lost through loss. The greatest, deepest, and only necessary death is the death of the illusion I am this body and mind. The difference between intellectual understanding and true seeing. Many people, after reading Ramana Maharshi's teachings, immediately feel moved and think, I have understood. But Ramana warns, intellectual understanding alone cannot liberate. Intellectual understanding is like seeing the moon reflected on the surface of a lake, beautiful, but not the real moon. True seeing is like looking directly up at the night sky, where the real moon is still there, motionless and bright, whether the clouds cover it or not. This does not come from learning more knowledge or blind belief, but from direct experience. Turn back and realize that which knows thoughts, feelings, body, does not belong to them. And when stopping there, see clearly that I we still believe to be ourselves is just a shadow woven by the mind. In that moment, seeing is no longer a concept, but a living experience, beyond words, beyond thought. It is a still, peaceful awareness without reason. Live now in knowing, and be free in this life. Ramana Maharshi did not just talk about death or reincarnation to comfort the fearful. He pointed out a truth. You do not need to wait for the next life, nor do you need to hope for enlightenment someday. You just need right now to stop, to turn to the knowing within you. Then you begin to live each moment without being bound by the past, without being haunted by the future. You still do your work, still love, still laugh and cry, but from a center that is still, calm and free. No more fear of loss, because you realize you have never had anything. No more fear of death, because you realize that no one has ever been born. And even suffering and challenges become opportunities to return to the pure self. It is not an escape from life, but a life lived fully, naturally, and most authentically when the ego has gradually dissolved. Conclusion, a simple yet great truth. No one has ever been born, how can anyone die? Ramana Maharshi did not give us high-level theories to calm people's fears. He showed us directly. I am not the body. I am not the mind. I am not the story I tell myself. In letting go of each layer of illusion, what remains, empty yet luminous, motionless yet alive, is the real you. And when you see that, samsara has never begun, death has never come near. You do not need to wish for a good rebirth. You can end samsara right now, just by ceasing to think of yourself as the one going through it. And at that moment, you become the nameless, eternal, unborn, undying light, which was you, before the notion of I even existed. Namaste.